He's on the move.
A spotless train arrives at a spotless platform, spot on time.
But in the land of the rising sun...
By dressing as English punks or American rockers, these young Japanese can be outrageous and blame it on somebody else.
Things aren't always what they seem.
See, I'm in Holland, but I'm also in Japan.
4 million Japanese come here every year to see what life in Europe is really like.
Full Circle with Michael Palin continues tomorrow at 8 on BBC One.
Featuring Newcastle United versus Wimbledon, plus all the day's action from the Premiership. Match of the day is in 20 minutes. First on BBC One, a little later than scheduled, the day's news and sport with Peter Sissons.
The government is warned of a showdown with Britain's teachers if it tries to freeze their pay. One teachers' leader says industrial action can't be ruled out if teachers are pushed down again. The Ulster Unionists edge closer to joining Monday's peace talks. They'll decide on the day. And a state funeral in Calcutta for Mother Teresa, already a saint to the poor. Good evening. A teachers' leader has warned of an explosion of anger among the profession if the government attempts to freeze teachers' pay. Nigel de Grucci of the second largest teaching union said there could be industrial action by teachers in response. His comments follow growing speculation that ministers intend to be as strict as the last Tory government on public sector pay, dashing the hopes of millions of workers. Our political correspondent David Walter reports.
Good lad.
Teachers are bracing themselves for their pay effectively to be frozen, with any rise limited to the rate of inflation. It'll be the 5th year running that's happened, and they find it particularly hard to take from a Labour government committed to education as its first priority.
Sooner or later, there's bound to be an explosion of anger amongst teachers. At some stage in the future, some kind of industrial action can't be ruled out if teachers are going to be pushed down year after year.
According to its critics, the government shouldn't be setting strict pay limits before its own review bodies had its say. That would look, they claim, like a slap in the face for its members.
They're considering at the moment evidence from teachers at a time when 15,000 teachers have left the profession this year, when we've got 1,000 head teachers short in our schools at the present time, and when the number of people coming forward for teaching is on the decline.
But according to the government supporters, low pay isn't the main reason that people don't want to teach. More money has been promised for education, but it shouldn't go on teachers' pay.
I think parents and children would be probably quite angry if the extra money that the government has found is eaten up in improving the pay of existing teachers. We want more teachers in the classroom, reduced class sizes, more library books, better information technology, and we want to improve the quality of our school buildings. That's where the money should go.
Doctors are in the same position as the teachers. They too are indignant at suggestions that their pay should be frozen. They're expected next week to put in a claim for a rise of around 50%. The nurses have already claimed 20%. Nobody at the moment suggesting that the new Labour government's heading for the sort of winter of discontent which finished off the last one. But the issue of public sector pay could see the first real clash between the government and the unions. And not all Labour MPs, at least privately, will necessarily be on the side of the government. David Walter, BBC News, Whitehall.
The Ulster Unionists have delayed a decision on whether to participate in next week's multi-party peace talks on Northern Ireland. After a meeting in Belfast, the party's executive stressed that a unionist voice should be heard, but said its leaders would finalise their position on Monday, the same day the talks are due to start at Stormont Castle. From Belfast, our Ireland correspondent Dennis Murray.
The Ulster Unionist executive meeting was the culmination of a consultation period initiated by party leader David Trimble. Senior members met business and community leaders, including, for the first time ever, the Catholic Church. 2 other unionist groupings have already pulled out of the talks, and the Ulster Unionists are highly sceptical of Sinn Féin's position, especially after the IRA statement this week that it had problems with the principles underpinning the talks process. The Unionists were somewhat reassured by an article by the Prime Minister in one of Belfast's morning newspapers today on that front. In the event, the party executive left day-to-day tactics up to the leadership.
The executive is firmly of the opinion that we should ensure one way or another, that the unionist voice is heard and that the union is defended. It authorised, therefore, the leadership to take what decisions and to follow what course of action it considers appropriate in response to the current situation.
That leadership will meet on Monday before the talks resume to decide what to do, in the same conference room as Sinn Féin or not. There now seems little prospect of any unionist party being present at the talks on Monday. The Ulster unionists, for the time being at least, seem likely to opt for being under the same roof. Proximity talks in the form of private meetings with individual parties. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Belfast.
Tens of thousands of people have lined the streets of Calcutta to pay their last respects to Mother Teresa. After a state funeral attended by dignitaries from around the world, her body was laid to rest at the headquarters of the religious order she founded to care for the destitute and the dying. Our South Asia correspondent Mike Wooldridge reports from Calcutta.
The cortege carrying her body passes through the streets of Calcutta, and many thousands of people seize their last chance to pay their respects. The funeral mass was held in an indoor stadium. Alongside India's political hierarchy, there were representatives of many foreign countries in which Mother Teresa's order works, and all ranks of the church, from the sisters who've lost their founder to cardinals. This congregation of world leaders had heard the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Sodano, tell them the homage they were paying Mother Teresa would be in vain if they did not pick up the work she had left off.
The poor are still with us. They must be at the very heart of our personal concern, of political action, of religious commitment.
The funeral has succeeded in striking a balance between solemnity and thanksgiving for the life of one of the legendary figures of the 20th century, whose influence has been compared by India's Prime Minister with that of Mahatma Gandhi. The state having paid its homage, Mother Teresa's body was handed back to the sisters who have lived and worked with her. Inevitably now, this will become a shrine to her work with the world's poorest people. Mike Wooldridge, BBC News, Calcutta.
In Bosnia, there's been a high turnout in the country's first local elections since the end of the civil war. International observers say the first day of polling went better than expected, though in disputed areas like Mostar, disagreements over voting rules caused some delays. The elections are seen as crucial in uniting the country. Our chief news correspondent Kate Adey reports.
The divisions in Bosnia are evident even before votes are cast. Separate polling stations in the town of Stolac. Muslim refugees who fled the town 5 years ago were bussed in under the watchful eyes of the NATO-led SFOR troops. The Croats, who now live in the town, watched in the distance. The Muslims were uncomfortable. My house is here, but the Croats won't let us live here, so we've just come for the day to vote. The irony is that these elections may well see the refugee vote winning in some towns, thereby creating town councils in exile. Across Bosnia, the election process has gone relatively smoothly today. Just one grenade explosion in Sarajevo and some administrative muddle in Brčko. The election is an administrative nightmare, with 800,000 refugees scattered far from their homes, and up to 30,000 of them, Serb, Croat and Muslim, crisscrossing the country to vote. It's taking 2,500 international supervisors to ensure who votes where and to minimize intimidation. Even so, in Mostar, the obstinacy and threats of boycott which plague elections here resulted in nitpicking argument and some polling stations being closed, others deserted. All the parties have indulged in prevarication in order to obtain concessions to their interpretation of free and fair elections. That this should happen right into polling day is not surprising, especially in the city of Mostar. Croat and Muslim factions were eventually corralled in a hotel, given a deadline and told to come to a deal. They did, having lost 9 hours of polling time. The elections were meant to help unify post-war Bosnia, but there is little sign that they will. Kate Adey, BBC News, Mostar.
Here, the Chancellor Gordon Brown has called for a vigorous debate in Britain on the arguments for and against a single European currency. His comments were made as EU finance ministers meeting in Luxembourg agreed there was now a greater chance of monetary union starting on schedule. From Luxembourg, our Europe business correspondent Jonathan Charles reports.
Warm smiles and plenty of humour. Outward signs the tide has turned for Europe's ambitious single currency project. Posing for the cameras at their talks in Mondorf-les-Bains, EU finance ministers believe monetary union will now begin on time. Stronger economic growth is helping their plans. Ministers hope Britain can be persuaded to take part.
I have the feeling, but maybe that this feeling is wrong, that there is an increasing willingness in Britain to reconsider the case.
The Chancellor, Gordon Brown, knows any fresh momentum puts increased pressure on the British to decide whether they'd like to join. The government now wants a vigorous debate in Britain on the pluses and minuses of monetary union. Many people will need convincing it'll create jobs in both Britain and the rest of Europe.
It does affect Britain in or out, and we've got to get what is the best result for the British national interest. But what I've also done in Europe is inject a note of realism into that debate and put employment and the problems of young, long-term unemployed people right at the centre of the debate, because if it's going to work, it can only work by solving the problem of employment and employment opportunity for all.
And here, ministers accept the debate may take some time to conclude. There's no mistaking the renewed confidence here. The British government will continue to keep its options open. But senior sources acknowledge that the single currency project may be so significant that Britain is unable to afford the luxury of staying out for good. Jonathan Charles, BBC News, Mondorf-les-Bains.
The recording of Candle in the Wind, Elton John's tribute to Diana, Princess of Wales, today sold out within hours of going on sale. People queued from the early hours to ensure they got a copy, and many stores had to limit the number customers could buy. The song's expected to go straight to #1 in the charts tomorrow. Duncan Kennedy reports.
Emptied as soon as they were filled. Tonight, stores across Britain had run out, bigger chains initially selling 1,000 records an hour. As the shutters went up this morning, the crowds rushed in. In scenes reminiscent of January's sales, shoppers bought up armfuls of CDs. This woman taking 40 for friends and family.
Everybody's crazy about this, you know. They've been listening and seeing the TV after the princess died.
I just like her work. My kids actually kicked me out of bed today to go and look for it.
Demand was the same everywhere. Here in Birmingham, the queue stretched round shops that sold out within 5 hours. We won't know officially until tomorrow afternoon whether Candle in the Wind has reached the top position in the charts. Some stores have already reported problems with supplies. But with buying going on by the handful, few doubt it will reach the top spot. The Elton John record is set to make records of its own. It's on target to surpass the existing biggest UK seller, Band-Aid's Do They Know It's Christmas, which sold 3.5 million copies. That's followed by Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody with 2.5 million, and Mull of Kintyre from Wings, which sold 2 million records.
Loveliness we've lost.
Tonight, Elton John confirmed his performance in Westminster Abbey was the last time he'll sing this song live. The music specialists believe it's now replacing the flowers as the tool of emotional expression.
I think that this disc has become the product which is the symbol of the nation's grief. Prior to this, it was the flowers that we saw outside both the palaces. Now, this will be the barometer of the nation's mood.
Removing decaying blooms went on today at Althorpe, where Diana is buried, but fresh ones were being added, whilst the flowers which had festooned the town of Felixstowe were spread in a simple maritime ceremony. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
And now, with news of a special day for Arsenal's Ian Wright and the rest of the sport, here's Rob Bonnet.
Yes, after 2 midweek goals for England, Arsenal's Ian Wright got another 3 today and therefore broke the club's individual scoring record of 178 goals, held for 51 years by Cliff Baston. Wright scored twice inside 25 minutes to get past the record. His 180th Arsenal goal came 9 minutes from time as Bolton were overwhelmed 4-1. Elsewhere, Graham Lasseau scored his first goal since returning to Chelsea in their comfortable 3-0 win at Crystal Palace. Liverpool captain Paul Ince led by example with a second league goal as his side beat Sheffield Wednesday 2-1. And Ugo Ekiog was amongst Villa's scorers at Barnsley in a 3-0 win. Well, highlights of the matches at Leicester, Manchester United and Newcastle can be seen on Match of the Day in a few minutes' time. If you don't want to know the results, then look away now. In the nationwide First Division, this morning's leaders West Bromwich Albion lost their undefeated record at Queen's Park Rangers. They were beaten 2-0, Gavin Peacock scoring Rangers second. Bradford are the new leaders, Swindon second, West Brom third. In Scotland's Premier Division, a late John Inglis equaliser gave Aberdeen an unexpected 3-3 draw at Rangers. Pat McGinley was amongst Hibs scorers in their 5-2 defeat of Dunfermline, and Simon Donnelly's late header gave Celtic a 3-2 win at Motherwell. So Hibernian lead Edinburgh rivals Hearts by 1 point. Rangers are third, but with 2 games in hand. Dunfermline are fourth. The British number 1, Greg Rosetsky, has been beaten in the semi-finals of the Samsung Tennis Open in Bournemouth. Rosetsky, a US Open finalist last weekend, lost in straight sets to Spain's Carlos Moya.
This would have been a tough test for Rosetsky at any time of the year, but exhausted after the US Open, there was always a likelihood that despite the Britain's good start, the top seed Carlos Moya would be one challenge too far. The Spaniard, ranked 5th in the world and a clay court specialist, knew that the longer the rallies wore on, the greater the chance would be of his fatigued opponent making an error.
Yes, good volley.
That gave Moya the first break of the match, and he'd broken serve again before he found himself serving with 3 set points. The second set was a similar story. Moya in control, Rosetsky well below his best, wasting the few chances he was given. The British number 1, who'd already done enough this week to move into the world's top 10, had little left to offer. Moya took just 48 minutes to complete a 6-2, 6-2 victory.
I think I ran out of energy physically and mentally, and I recovered from my cold, but unfortunately I just couldn't produce the tennis I needed today, and it would have been difficult even if I was in my best form to beat a player such as Carlos Moya.
There was better news, though, for British tennis in Uzbekistan, where Tim Henman was beating another Spaniard, Francisco Clave, to reach his 3rd ATP final of the year. A win tomorrow against Switzerland's Marc Rosset would further consolidate Henman's position in the world's top 20. James Pearce, BBC News.
Pat Edery has become the 3rd British jockey to reach 4,000 career winners by riding the favourite Silver Patriarch to victory in the St Leger at Doncaster. Silver Patriarch, just beaten into 2nd place in the Derby, took control of the race a furlong from home. Lee Mackenzie describes the closing stages.
Silver Patriarch goes on now from vertical speed. The Flyers running on in 3rd place then from Windsor Castle, but the favourite's going to win, and Pat Edery's going to get his 4,000th winner in the St Leger, and it's Silver Patriarch who wins it.
Edery joins Lester Piggott and Sir Gordon Richards with his 4,000th winner. With only 1 round of matches to play, Glamorgan have replaced Kent at the top of the Britannic Assurance County Championship after a 7-wicket victory against Essex at Cardiff. Kent could only draw against Yorkshire at Headingley. Glamorgan, chasing a target of 149, lost 3 early wickets before captain Matthew Maynard steered his side to victory with an unbeaten 75. Glamorgan will now be champions if they take maximum points from their last match against Somerset. And Ashia Hansen has broken the British women's triple jump record at the IAAF Grand Prix final in Japan. Peter.
And the main news again tonight, the government has been warned of an explosion of anger if it decides to freeze teachers' pay. That's all from the BBC Newsroom tonight. From Rob, from me, good night.
Good evening to you. Well, the breezy weather's staying with us, and in the shelter of the wind tonight, it's going to be a pretty cold night in country areas. Temperatures down to 3 to 5 degrees. Still some showers showing up on the radar screen, quite a number feeding in through the Irish Sea into northwest England, 1 or 2 getting into Derbyshire as well. Widespread showers across the west and north of Scotland, and they're set to continue through the night, although just 1 or 2 showers left further south around those western coasts. The high pressure well in charge for the rest of the weekend across the south, so plenty of sunshine coming up here. A different story for the northwest with that next weather system brushing through Scotland. So a lot of cloud up there in the morning, outbreaks of rain too, especially over northern and western Scotland, 1 or 2 patches down into Northern Ireland too, and some showers still fringing those northwestern coasts. But elsewhere, lots of sunshine, albeit hazy at times, and during the afternoon even the eastern side of higher ground in the north could well brighten up for a while. Pretty warm in the south tomorrow with less wind about, 17 to 19 degrees, but rather chilly and still breezy across the northern parts of Scotland, and there's more wet weather to come on Monday as well, especially for the north. Goodbye.
John Major pinned his reputation on the pound.
He wanted to show that he was more of an Iron Man than Thatcher was an Iron Lady.
Then it crashed.
You can hear wave after wave of selling.
Panic set in.
We found we had not got sufficient control over events.
In the very eye of the storm, things are calm and quiet.
And the public had to pay the price.
Mortgage rates, no way.
They got it completely wrong.
Black Wednesday, the 5th anniversary, Tuesday 10:30 on BBC One. In '66, there was another game.
And there's a goal! It goes on day after day.
In 1997, there's only one. Celtic versus Liverpool, the rematch, Tuesday at 8 on BBC One.
A little bit later than billed because of our earlier extended last night of the proms. All the best from the Premiership now on BBC One with